Hey guys, it's your girl Aisha, aka Geek XX Chic, and we are back with another review to The Walking Dead. This is for episode 17, which was called A New Deal. So this episode picked up exactly where we left off. It looks like Daryl and Daryl and Maggie and Gabriel and Negan and his wife and all of them are just kind of still working on the outside. They're dealing with Hornsby, who is desperately trying to clean up this mess before he goes back to the Commonwealth, but it's not going well for obvious reasons. He underestimated them, right? We know from last season, or the last part of this season, that he grossly underestimated the skills of these people. I think he feels like he's worldly. He thinks like having, his army is enough. But I've said this many, many seasons that being out there, living the life, the hard life that Rick's group has, it gives you experience that people who've been cushioned behind those walls like they have since the beginning just simply don't understand. But anyways, it is getting exhausting. Like Hornsby's essentially got an endless supply of men that he can bring out, whether or not they're actually soldiers or how many of them are actually people that he's using, much like we've seen already, like people who are falling through the cracks of society that are kind of being dragged out there. The point being, he's got a lot of people, and as our crew said, there's only going to be so long before he's going to just get tired of the cat and mouse game and start trying to go after their families inside the walls as collateral. And we see that that's exactly what ended up happening. He tried to get some of his people. We saw the fake, what's Eugene's girlfriend's name? It slipped right out of my head. But yeah, her, Delilah or something. Oh my gosh, all the names are gone. It'll come to me. Anyways, we see that her and another person that works with him were out there looking for Daryl, Daryl's kids, basically, because he wants Daryl specifically, because Daryl shot him right across the face. But they decided that they couldn't keep going like this. Somebody had to go back and warn the people inside the walls that this could potentially happen and they need to protect the children. And so they nominated Negan because they knew that none of them, like Gabriel can't go back. All of them are faces that are recognizable. And of course, also Maggie, because during their little governor's tour to try to recruit them, she was somebody that they had there too. So Negan's the only face they don't know. So they said, look, you got to go in there, ask for these people, and then you got to get the word out. So that's what they ended up doing. And thankfully, that scrappy resourcefulness that they've developed over the years has helped them to kind of keep staying half a step ahead of Hornsby. But of course, there's only so much ground that they can cover by foot, and he's got a lot more men. So it's basically a situation where they're, like I said, they're literally just a few steps ahead of him. But of course, at some point people got to sleep, they got to eat, and this can't continue for too long. So they're going to have to find a way to end it. But I kind of like that they're not just running away. They are trying to whittle his army down a little by little, and it's been working for the most part. But as we saw towards the end there, luring them into the sewer definitely helped to a degree, because obviously they can't see everything. They can't move as a unit the way they would on the outside. And Daryl finally has the drop on him. But I think the biggest challenge is going to be, does he want to kill Hornsby? Like, I know Daryl wants to kill him, but it doesn't make sense at this point, right? Because it's going to be very hard to go back to the Commonwealth if you've got Hornsby's body, right? Especially considering that, I don't know if Daryl and this group knows, but we know that he's related to Pamela somehow, or at least that he's known her for a long time. So there is an emotional connection there, and that would be very hard to justify coming back with him. There's probably no excuse they could come up with why his throat was slit, for example. However, Hornsby's so bloody crazy, and he is at the point now where I feel like catching them is just a pride thing for him, right? It's not even logical at this point. The logical thing for him would have been to go back to the Commonwealth, corner the families that are inside, and wait for them to come to them, right? That would be the smart thing for him to do. But the fact that he's chasing them like this and actually trying to shoot after them, like I said, it's a pride thing for him now. He is snapped fully. So I really do worry about what they're going to be able to do with him, because I just don't think he's going to allow them to do whatever it is that they want to get their way. But anyways, I don't think he wants to particularly die now either. So we'll see whether or not they're able to figure something out with him. I don't know if it's keeping him hostage or what they're going to do, because they are still outnumbered. They're still outgunned in that sewer. And unless they're willing to actually kill Hornsby, it could get quite ugly. On the inside of things, we've got Negan, who made his way in, and it's kind of just funny to always see Negan in these situations, right? Like, he's definitely mellower than what we saw years ago, but he always just comes into these civilized, areas, and he's just like, oh my God, like half of him's like, I could take over this place and it'd be pretty sweet. And then the other half of him is probably like, oh my God, you guys are completely living in a dream world. Like, how are you sitting here with ice cream shots when there's all this stuff going on outside? But anyway, he manages to get in and get to Carol. And I love, as usual, Carol is always two steps ahead of any civilized group now, right? Like, we don't know what Carol learned on her sabbatical all those years ago when Rick exiled her, but she just leveled up 1,000 times. And ever since, she's had one eye on the door no matter where she ends up. And thankfully, she knew something was up and that something might happen because Daryl and all of them had not returned yet. She knows that Daryl, since he's had Rick's kids, does not just wander for days without any kind of contact, right? She knew something must be wrong, but she doesn't know exactly what. And of course, she's trying to keep the kids calm. And I think that's especially for Judith, because we already know that Judith has it in her to want to start, I don't think it's going to take that much for her to don that hat and grab that sword again. And this is not the right place for her to do that just yet. But also, I think Carol's probably enjoying letting her have this normalcy she's never had. Like I said in the earlier part of the episode, we've never seen Judith in just plain clothes this long before, just being a girl. And it's an experience she deserves to have. But again, with all that's happening in this world, you wonder how much of that is good for her. But I digress. We see that Carol, gets one step ahead, and Negan gets to her, lets her know the situation on the outside. And she's like, okay, cool. We're going to keep the kids hidden for now because that's definitely where they're going to go. They've already tried to grab them. We'll keep them hidden for now and let us figure out a way to kind of come up with a middle of the road plan, because we can't exactly get out right now and they're not going to be able to come in if we don't have some kind of leverage to guarantee their safety. So we see that she and Negan decide to go and look for the plans of this city so they can figure out what the exits might be, a way that they can escape basically undetected, I guess, and in a way that's not going to stir up a whole civil war. But also she figures, again, Carol 10 steps ahead is like, we need something to get the governor in our pocket. Like, what can we do? And we see that little cockroach Sebastian is out there hiding now that this article exposed that he is a sniveling piece of crap. And Carol's like, he couldn't have left the city because there's no way that would have been allowed to happen. Plus, he's too much of a wuss to do that. He's got to be here, which means he's found a place somewhere in this building. He's found a place that no one knows about, or not a lot of people know about. And she used those plans to figure it out. And she took him, which was a smart move, because we all know that it seems like this governor is got a big weak spot for her son. It reminds me a lot of Deanna, kind of how she was with her boys, right? She kind of a big soft spot for her oldest boy, despite the fact that he was very problematic. Understandable though, right? It's her only, at that time it was her only kid, but digressing. So bringing the son to the mother was, I think, it's a play that's annoying because Sebastian absolutely deserves to pay for what he's done. So many people have died because of his whims. But at the same time, as I said, at the moment, Carol does not have a clear exit strategy for all of her people, right? Because it's not just her and the kids, it's Rosita, it's Magda, it's what's her name, the lawyer whose name just went out of her head, and her brother Kumiko and her brother. So it's like there's just too many people for them to just be able to slide out. And now with this herd heading their way, there's a lot more extra tension and chaos going on. So Carol kind of needs something, and unfortunately it might mean that this little jerk does not get the justice he deserves right now. I do wonder who she plans on pinning this on, but in the end, I think it's a good, like I said, it's a good play for now, because if it's played right and the governor presents that her son is not run, then that kind of quells a little bit of this whole revolution situation going on. And then if they can kind of turn the eyes elsewhere, that allows them to kind of focus on the walkers that are clearly coming towards this town. But even beyond that, that whole walker herd thing is absolutely the distraction that they need right now to potentially get out of the city. Because if there's anybody who knows how to walk amongst the dead, it's Rick's group, right? As opposed to a lot of the people in that city who would not know the first thing about how to handle themselves out there. So I don't know exactly what the plan's going to be, but like Carol said, they need to bide time until the other people get back, because they don't know where they are, what Hornsby might be doing with them. And it might turn into a situation where it's like, we need to do some kind of a trade-off. But like I said, Hornsby's crazy. So I really don't know that there's anything inside of the Commonwealth that he would be willing to risk giving up this prideful hunt for, even if he does somehow reverse the tables and get the jump back on this group. And the only other thing we kind of touched on in this episode, of course, was a little bit of the, people who kind of want to stay versus not stay. Like, I think there are people like Rosita, for example, even to an extent, Kumiko, even though she told her that, she was telling Meg that it was because of her brother. But I think that Kumiko likes being in this environment again, being a lawyer again, getting to go back to some level of normalcy. It's understandable. And of course, with Rosita, I think she's thinking it's a place I can raise my infant daughter safely, not be out on the road, not wondering when the next big disaster is going to happen. So I think that there's going to definitely be people who don't want to leave if they can fix the Commonwealth somehow. But then there's also, those who are like Carol, who's always got one eye on the door, right? She never wants to stay in any of these communities too long. So I do think we're going to come up against a bit of a moral dilemma if we do get everybody back inside the Commonwealth. Do they stay and try to change it, or do they move on? And if they do move on, where do they go, right? Because that's the other question. We know now that they've already taken over Alexandria, what was left of Alexandria. They've destroyed what was left of Hilltop. I mean, there wasn't much there anyways. And then, of course, they've taken over Seaside. Yeah, it's icky. It's scary. It's definitely a tense position, but we're going to have to see how it all plays out. And again, where we're going to lead to, because as I said, we're at the final season here. Like, what's the point? What's going to be the end game? Is it going to be to take over the Commonwealth? Is it going to be some other new threat? So many questions. We got a lot of flashbacks and a lot of old faces being shown in this episode as well. And I can't think that that's for nothing. Seeing Rick again, seeing Shane again, seeing just a lot of people we haven't seen in a long time, a mention of Glenn. So I feel like all these things are all little seeds that are going to be harvested as the season finishes up. So I enjoyed watching this episode, guys. What are your theories about where we're going to get and how we're going to end this season? Please let me know in the comments below. And if you like this video, I'd appreciate it if you showed it some love with the like button, and we will see you in the next video.